In exactly 63 seconds, a DNA report shattered the calm of Congress. Jasmine Crockett stared down Donald Trump live on national TV and exposed a 99.97% match to a missing 13-year-old girl tied to Epstein's network. The room froze. America gasped. What truth did Jasmine uncover that made the most powerful man in the country lose his voice under oath? The call came at 7:13 a.m. Jasmine Crockett wasn't supposed to be in D.C. that day, let alone inside a Capitol hearing. Her calendar was clean, her phone was off, and her mind was halfway across the country with her mother, who just started her third round of chemo. But the voice on the other end of the line was calm, sharp, and urgent. Congresswoman Crockett, we need you on the oversight panel. Digital surveillance reform. Noon Reburn, room 214. Bipartisan attendance. Sensitive topic. She didn't ask questions. Something about the way the aide spoke tight and almost rehearsed made her heart kick up a beat. She got dressed in silence. Navy suit, low bun, neutral lips, her armor. The black SUV picked her up at 8:45 sharp. The driver didn't speak. Capitol Hill passed by like azulent blur of columns and secrets. But when she stepped out at the side lot behind the building, her eyes caught it instantly. A small USB drive taped to her windshield. It glinted silver under the morning light. No label, no note, just a folded scrap of paper beneath the wiper blade. She glanced around. No one. She peeled it off. Heart now Thursdaying just under her ribs. 4 words written in all caps. Play this alone. Her aide Marcus raised an eyebrow when she stepped inside the briefing room. Jasmine slid the USB into her coat pocket without a word. For the next hour, she sat through pre-hearing notes, half listened to procedural chatter, and nodded at names she didn't care to remember. But her fingers kept tracing the edge of the metal drive, like it was pulsing with static. At 11:06 a.m., she excused herself, walked into a CB office, locked the door, drew the blinds, and slid the USB into the port of a secured laptop. No password, no encryption, just a single folder labeled confidential. MYAROO. She clicked one file. DNA report 7913.pdf. Her hands tightened around the trackpad. The file opened. The screen flickered, then steadied. What stared back was a 2-page genetic match sheet, technical, clinical, sterile, until her eyes found the final line in bold. Child 7912.399. 97% paternal match to DJT. Jasmine's lungs locked. Her mouth went dry. DJT, the initials burned like acid. She skimmed the document again now, line by line, breath quickening. Sample date, March 12, 2000. Sample origin, Reykjavik, Genomics Institute, Iceland. Custodian, redacted. Subject of interest, female, age 13. Status missing. At the bottom of the report, there was a single stamp seal, faint, foreign, but unmistakably real. She zoomed in on the watermark, Epstein Global Trust. Something deep inside her stomach twisted, her jaw clenched. This wasn't a rumor. This wasn't some online conspiracy passed around by trolls in comment sections. This was a medical document, a chain of evidence, and someone wanted her to have it. The screen went black automatically, like someone had programmed it to self-close. She sat frozen in the empty room, pulse-hammering eyes locked on the blank monitor. The only sound was her own breathing, short, sharp, disbelieving. She didn't move for a full minute. Then finally, slowly, she whispered to no own it all. No way. What kind of secret leaves a digital footprint in Iceland, and a child erased from American memory? Jasmine didn't sleep that night. The DFI looped in her mind like a siren she couldn't turn off. Child 79123. The initials DJT, the watermark, Epstein Global Trust. It wasn't just a document, it was a wound someone tried to cauterize with money and distance. But even a sealed file leaves fingerprints. By morning, she was already on a secure line to a contact buried deep inside, a global transparency watchdog. Her request was simple: trace the origin of the lab listed in the file. The reply came in under 3 hours. Reykjavik, Genomics Institute, private contracts only, and one of their most confidential clients. A shell company linked to both the Epstein estate and the Trump organization. Her heart pounded as the dots began to connect, not with theories, but with documentation. She requested the procurement logs from 1999 through 2002. 3 shipments stood out, all listed under biomedical preservation. Destination Wa Virgin Thwai, origin Argisland, and every single one marked with a donor code that sent her blood cold. Code TE for 5 p.m. That code appeared at Ganning, an offshore wire transfer uncovered by investigative journalists in 2018. At the time, no one understood its meaning. Now Jasmine did. T for Trump, E for Epstein, PM, possibly private minor or worse, pregnant, minor. The screen in front of her blurred for a moment. She blinked hard. Marcus stepped in quietly. He called back. He said, "The contact from Reykjavik, E. He's willing to talk. Off record tonight. One condition, no cameras, no phones, just you." Jasmine nodded. "Where?" "Embassy Row, abandoned Eden House, 11:30 p.m. The rain fell in sheets that night as if DC itself wastering to wash away what was coming. Jasmine arrived alone, hood-up coat, soaked heart like a drumline in her ears. The door creaked open with no one visible. She stepped inside. The man stood in the corner, silhouetted by the weak glow of a dying lamp. Mid-40s, Scandinavian accent, face half-shadowed, hands shaking slightly. "You found the airport," he said. Not a question. "I did," Jasmine replied, "and I need the truth." He nodded once. "Then I will tell you what your government doesn't want known." He worked at Reykjavik Genomics Institute from 1997 to 2003. During that time, he said they processed hundreds of confidential DNA matches, but only one ever came with a direct gag order, signed by 2 U.S. law firms. The child was SMIL 13. Her genetic profile triggered an alert in their system. Anomaly. Reproductive abuse marker detected. The father listed was not a donor. He was someone powerful. The child never should have existed. He said they were trying to erase evidence of what had been done to her. Epstein's lawyers coordinated it. But the payment, the largest we'd ever received, it didn't come from Epstein's account. It came from Manhattan. Jasmine stepped closer. "From who?" He hesitated, then handed her a printout, faded smudge, but legible. Client code, DJT, routing bank Deutsche Trust, New York payment amount, 3.4 million, USD memo. Genetic disposal services, full custody transfer. She stared at the paper, then embers, the initials. It wasn't just real, it was intentional. They hadn't buried a child. They had purchased her silence before she could ever speak. The man looked at her, voice lower now. "I left the lab after that. I couldn't stay, but no one would believe me until someone like you showed up." Jasmine tucked the page into her jacket, every nerve on fire. She didn't thank him. There were no words for gratitude in the face of horror. Back in her car, engine off, she held the paper in her lap. "Why would they hide a child?" she whispered. "Unless she was never supposed to be born." Jasmine didn't drive home that night. She couldn't. The meeting in the abandoned townhouse had left her, not with answers, but with fire. The kind affair that burned through illusions and left nothing behind but duty. The printout with the client, code DJT, sat Basidia in the passenger seat, like it was watching her. Memo line: genetic disposal services, routing bank Deutsche Trust, payment $3.4 million, and the word that made her skin crawl: custody. She parked beneath the underpass just south of Constitution Avenue, where the shadow of the Capitol cut through the haze. Rain continued tapping against the windshield like a metronome, counting down to something irreversible. She didn't move for a while, just sat there watching theolites shimmer in the puddles, thinking what she had wasn't just explosive, it was radioactive. If she detonated this, there would be no walking away. Her hands hovered over the folder again. The evidence was airtight, at least enough to start the fire. But the blowback that would come hard and fast, she'd be labeled unstable, called a liar, a race baiter, a loudmouth, a woman out. They'd drag her law degree, her past cases, her family, even her mother's cancer into the line of fire. They'd say she faked it all, that Epstein was a distraction, that Trump was just a victim of another witch hunt. She opened her phone and scrolled past the flood of unread messages, some from colleagues, a few from journalist Saldi sniffing around, and one from an unknown number marked urgent. But she passed them all, stopped on the contact, saved under one name, only Mum. Her thumb hesitated, then pressed. Twarings, then a voice soft but steady. Jasmine closed her eyes. "Hey Ma, it's early. You all right?" There was a pause. She tried to speak, tried again, then "Ma, I found something awful, and it's real. It's about him, about a girl, a missing one. Silence, the kind only a mother knows how to hold without fear. I don't know if I can bring it forward, Jasmine said finally. They'll destroy me. They'll come for everything. Her mother didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. If it's true, she said, then that child never got a voice. So be that voice. Jasmine opened her eyes. Her throat tightened. She didn't cry, not now. I'm proud of you, her mother added. Now go finish what God put in your hands. By dawn, Jasmine had printed every verifiable file, transcribed the audio logs, and written down her questions, each sharp as a blade. She didn't need to prove through-hole conspiracy. She just needed to pierce the silence enough to make America stop pretending it didn't know. At 11:42 a.m., Jasmine walked the east corridor of Rabaran Building with slow, deliberate steps. The folder was in her left hand. Her right was clenched so tight, her nails left crescent in her palm. Reporters buzzed by the entrance. The chamber, doors opened. She stepped in. Congressional aides shifted. Committee members whispered. And on the far end of the long oak table, seated like a king without a throne, was Donald J. Trump, laughing, reclining like none of this could touch him. He hadn't seen her yet. She took her seat at the panel bench. No script, no teleprompter, just paper, truth and fury. A technician stepped to the camera booth, adjusted the lens, gave her the signal. She flipped open the folder. The red tally light blinked once, then locked solid. Live. The room was colder than it should have been, not by temperature, but by tone. The kind of cold that came from marble floors, glassy eyes, and too many secrets held behind pressed suits and polished shoes. Oversight chambers always carried a certain stillness before the storm. But today, something electric pulsed beneath the surface, like the air itself knew what was about to happen. Jasmine Crockett walked in with calm precision. Her navy suit was the same as yesterday, but her expression was different, sharper, harder. No folder in hand this time, just a small black flash drive gripped between her fingers like a trigger. The gallery was full reporters, analysts, hill aides, and two cameras rolling silently behind frosted glass. Every twerk was watching. Every breath felt recorded. At the far end of the horseshoe table sat Donald J. Trump. He was flanked by his legal team, whispering in his ear like crows circling a corpse, all dressed in gray and power. Trump leaned back in his chair, smiling like he already knew the ending. He laughed at something. His attorney muttered, teeth showing, ice scanning the room like a predator bored with its prey. Jasmine didn't look at him. She moved directly to her seat, inserted the flash drive into the panel's master port, and leaned into the microphone. Madam Chair, with permission, I'd like to begin with a visual exhibit, she said. The chair nodded. The screens flickered once, then steadied. A single page appeared on every screen in the chamber plane. Clinical stamped at the top, Rayquick Genetics Institute. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. This report she began was acquired through legal third-party channels, submitted by a former employee of a foreign genetics lab, used by multiple American private clients. The contents have been verified independently by 2 forensic labs, and the metadata was confirmed by the Library of Congress Digital Analysis Team. She paused. Her eyes scanned the room. Some senators leaned forward. Others froze hands mid-note-taking. I will not name the subject in this initial review. Not yet, she said. But what you're looking at is a direct paternal DNA match between a U.S. citizen and a minor who disappeared in the year 2000. Someone in the back dropped a pen. Jasmine clicked her remote once. The report zoomed in, highlighting one line in yellow. Paternal probability 997%. She read it aloud, each word cutting through the air like a scalpel. One child, one man. A match so statistically axed, it cannot be dismissed as error, manipulation, or coincidence. No one moved. No one spoke. The gallery had turned to stone. Trump leaned forward now. His smile was gone. Jasmine let the silence linger just long enough to feel sharp. Then she clicked the remote again, returning the report to full screen. I'm not asking you to believe me, she said. I'm asking you to read what's in front of you and ask yourself it. If it meant nothing, this file was sealed, encrypted, and paid for in cash through a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands. A low wave of murmurs spread through the room like a tremor beneath the floor. Trump stared at the screen, lips pressed, knuckles white. For the first time that morning, he wasn't laughing. The tremor hadn't settled when Jasmine reached into her bag and pulled out a second document. age creased and yellowed along the fold, like it had waited 2 decades to be read again. The DNA report had cracked the surface. What she held now would carve straight through bone. She didn't ask permission. She didn't need to. The cameras were still rolling. America was still watching. This, Jasmine said, holding it up between 2 fingers, was recovered during a civil deposition in Florida. Filed in a sealed family court hearing. Under case number ZO, FC7 man, for 2. Hidden, for 23 years. She unfolded the paper slowly, like peeling back a scab. It was a single sheet of lined notebook paper. The ink faded to a pale grey blue. Jasmine had read it 10 times the night before. It still made her stomach turn. It's a journal entry, she continued, voice low but steady. Written by a 13-year-old girl placed under protective custody after being removed from the Palm Beach estate of one Jeffrey Edward Epstein. The room stiffened. That name hit differently now, like saying it out loud could conjure ghosts. Jasmine didn't flinch. She read, "He called me Angel, but he wasn't God. He said if I told anyone, they wouldn't believe me. He said I was lucky, that he knew people, big people. He laughed when I cried. He laughed and said, 'Your body's not yours anymore.'" The chamber went dead silent. Even the click of pens had stopped. Jasmine placed the page beneath the document camera so every screen in the room could see. The handwriting crooked, scared, thickened. No child should ever have to write. She let the image linger. Before she spoke again, that journal entry was never reviewed by a grand jury. It was buried, not because it was irrelevant, but because someone paid to make sure it stayed irrelevant. Her hand moved calmly now. Another document surfaced from the folder, black and white medical a sonogram dated March 14, 2000. Jasmine placed it beside the journal entry. On screen, the image of a fetus appeared. Crown rump length, 9 centimeters, estimated gestation 12 weeks. The name attached to the file had been redacted, but the medical center logo was visible, Palm West Hospital. "Now," Jasmine said, her voice tightening, "this scan was found in the same sealed file. The attending physician confirmed the patient was 13 years old. The pregnancy was never reported to state authorities, and within 2 weeks, the girl vanished." Shall it, that hang for a moment. The implication wasn't abstract anymore. It had a heart, a shape, a name the world never knew. The sonogram flickered on. Screen, still grainy clinical, but Tonyan with a conscience. It looked like a scream. Jasmine looked down the bench. Some lawmakers turned their eyes away. Some didn't move at all. But one pair of eyes stared at her, jaw clenched. Trump. She looked directly at him now, for the first time since the hearing began. "I want the American people to hear this clearly," she said. "This isn't about speculation. It isn't about partisanship. It's about a girl who was us, a pregnancy that was erased, and a page that was buried." Then she stepped back from the mic, and said few words like a blade drawn slow. "And the father is sitting right behind me." The moment the words left her mouth, the silence shattered. Trump slammed his palm against the table, the sharp crack echoing through the chamber like a gunshot. Papers jumped. Staffer flinched. One of his lawyers reached for his arm, but he jerked away. "Lies," he bellowed, voice already red with rage. "This is a political stunt, manufactured garbage. She's grandstanding." Jasmine didn't blink. She didn't raise her voice. She simply turned to the screen behind her and pressed a single button on the remote. The display shifted. Large white letters lit up against a black background. 2 words, bold, final, paternal match. Donald J. Trump. Gasps tore through the room like a wave breaking over stone. Reporters scrambled to tweet type record. A camera cursed under his breath, adjusting focus just as Trump's face lost all color. Across the internet, the clip exploded within seconds. On live streams, news feeds, and phones across the country, millions saw it. Those words that screamed that face. He stood halfway up from his chair, pointing at the monitor like he could scare it back into darkness. "That's fake," he snapped. "Photoshopped AI generated." "I never." Jasmine cut in her voice like ice on glass. "The report has been verified by 3 independent labs, Mr. Trump, including one used by your own defense team during your second impeachment trial." He stopped just for a second, but enough to register that she was telling the truth. "You think I don't know what this is?" he sneered. "You want your moment? You want attention? You'll burn the country for it." Jasmine stepped forward slowly, each word deliberate. "This isn't about attention. It's about accountability. And right now, The only thing burning is your alibi." A murmur rolled across the room like distant thunder. No one reached for their coffee. No one whispered into their earpiece. The air had frozen in place. Jasmine held up a copy of the financial record, clear as crystal. $9 million, she said. "That's what you paid over 7 years to a network of shell companies, foreign labs, and legal firms, all tied to the suppression of this report." Trump's hands curled into fists. His lips moved, but nothing came out. She tilted her head, voice steady, sharp. "If the science is fake, Mr. Trump, then tell us, why did you spend $9 million keeping it buried?" The room hadn't recovered from the last blow when Jasmine reached for the next. Her voice softened now, not because she wasn't certain, but because what came next didn't need thunder to shatter hearts. It only needed truth. She placed a faded manila envelope on the table, the kind no one used anymore. The kind meant to disappear. The flap was unsealed, threw it inside, crushing. "I want to enter into the record a written statement." She began, eyes scanning the chamber. "It's from a former social worker assigned to a Florida juvenile the early 2000s, Palm Bay transitional home just 12 miles from Epstein's Palm Beach estate." The words landed heavy. Some members shifted. One staffer looked up sharply. "Jasmine accountant. She writes about a girl." Jasmine said, "A girl placed there after being pulled from an unregistered property. No paperwork, no legal guardian, no birthday on file. Just one name given by the girl herself." She opened the envelope slowly and pulled out a folded page. She didn't read it like a politician. She read it like someone remembering a funeral. Her name was Marin. She was too quiet for courage. She flinched when anyone raised their voice. She didn't like mirrors. And she cried when someone touched her wrist like it reminded her of something she couldn't forget. The room was so still Jasmine could hear the buzz of thicker mirrors above her. She unfolded a photo next, sealed for over 20 years in a court-protected custody file. A girl, maybe 13, pale brown eyes, wide with the kind of fear that didn't belong to childhood. Her hair was pulled back. She wore a borrowed shirt 2 sizes too big. Jasmine laid the photo beneath a document camera. The screens lit up with Marin's face. "This photo," Jasmine said, "was buried in sealed court records by attorneys representing Jeffrey Epstein's estate. It was never released. It never made the press. But it matches perfectly with a missing person report from 2001. She clicked the remote. Another image appeared. A poster, weather-worn, margins faded. "Missing Marin Delaney. Last seen May 3rd, 2001. Location, Palm Beach, Florida. Age 13. Status, case closed. Voluntary runaway." Jasmine let that hang in the air. She didn't run. Jasmine's psyche was erased. She placed both images side by side on the screen. The photo from the shelter and the poster from the cold case file. Same girl, same eyes, same vanishing. There's no record of her being adopted. No foster home. No school enrollment. Her name doesn't appear in any medical logs after 2001. But Jasmine pulled out one last page. A payment log, cold mathematical. Lines of transactions linked to offshore accounts tied to Epstein's legal shell network. One entry, August 14, 2001. Recipient Redect. Amount, $275,000. Memo, property secure. Her voice sharpened. They didn't list her as a person. They listed her as property. Trump didn't speak. He didn't move. Booth's left hand was curled so tightly around the arm of his chair. The skin had gone white. Jasmine didn't look at them. She kept her eyes on the photo of Marin. "I looked for her name. I thought I'd find it on a tombstone. I didn't." She held up the ledger. "I found her name, and it wasn't in a graveyard. It was in a payment ledger." The chamber hadn't exhaled since the last name appeared on the screen. But Jasmine wasn't done. Not even close. She reached into her folder and pulled out a new document, thicker bound, stamped by the Department of Treasury. This wasn't a speech. It was an autopsy, and the body was financial. She placed it down with a steady hand, eyes never leaving the row of silent lawmakers. Then, without a word, she tapped the remote. The screen behind her changed. This time, no faces, just a spreadsheet, numbers, banks, dates. But to anyone who understood power, it was louder than any scream. "This," she said, voice clear, "is a Treasury certified audit. 22 international wire transfers, all originating from Trump-affiliated business entities, primarily shell corporations, and all routed directly into Epstein-controlled trust between 1998 and 2002. The screen zoomed in. Line 14 lit up. Originating account TNTL Holdings LLC Recipient Trust, J Legacy Partners came in amount 42,500 date, May 3rd of 2001. Jasmine paused. Let the silence fill the gaps between the digits. That's the exact day Marin vanished from the Palm Bay shelter. Number, delay, no paperwork, no trace, just a line item. Murmurs rippled across the gallery. Reporters leaned forward. Jasmine clicked again. Line 6 lit up. Date, November 12, 1999. Amount, $380. 000. Memo PR clearance NT. That date, she continued, matches a sealed case involving a 13-year-old placed into a psychiatric ward in West Palm Beach after refusing to name her abuser. Her file was sealed. Her testimony vanished, but the money didn't. She turned toward witness table. A man rose-gray suit, wireframe glasses, calm as a surgeon. Roger Curry, senior analyst, U.S. Office of Foreign Asset Control. 30 years off. Dirty money in each of the 17 transactions. He said, we found abnormal timing. No payroll, no tax stress, no vendor listed. Just silent money paid within 72 hours of a girl being silenced in court, or institutionalized without further follow-up. He scanned the room slowly, then locked his eyes on Trump. This isn't coincidence, it's pattern, it's deliberate, and in the compliance world, it's what we call red flag laundering. Trump didn't move. His eyes were open fixed, but his jaw clenched, hard enough to grind. Jasmine stepped forward again, this time holding a double column names on one side, dollar amounts on the other. Each line told a story, a girl who vanished, and a sum that followed. 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds, some with initials, others with file numbers only. No birthday, no burial, just price tags. These aren't donations, they aren't business write-offs. These are human erasers, lives converted into line items, disappearances disguised as balance sheets. She turned to face Trump, slowly, deliberately. Her voice dropped into something colder now. Mr. Trump, every one of these transfers traces back to entities you helped create, signed, notarized, and operated through intermediaries who now plead the fifth. His mouth opened slightly. Nothing came out. She lifted the file, faced the camera, and held the ledger at chest. Yet. So tell me, Mr. Trump, she said, locking eyes with the man across the room, are these business expenses blood money? The numbers had stopped the room cold, but Jasmine knew what came next would stop its heartbeat. It wasn't a ledger. It wasn't a financial audit. It was something far more dangerous, a voice. One they thought they'd buried with Epstein himself. But some ghosts don't stay in the ground. She reached into the inside pocket of her blazer and pulled out a single folded page. Thin, fragile, trembling slightly between her fingers. Not a court document, not a spreadsheet, just paper, lined, torn, and in handwriting that curved awkwardly, like it had been written in the dark. This, Jasmine said, was found inside a drawer at Epstein's New York townhouse, hidden beneath a fowl's bottom and a locked jewelry case. It was retrieved 2 days after his death by a former housekeeper who contacted my office 6 months ago. The chamber had heard scandals before, but now it listened. Jasmine unfolded the page, carefully flattening the creases. She didn't look up when she spoke. She just tread. If I die, it's because the secret became too loud. They said silence waste, safest place, but the silence feels like suffocating. He told me I would vanish before my name ever mattered. So, if this letter survives me, tell someone, I was real. Her voice didn't waver, but the silence afterward did more than any speech could. This was written by a girl known only in the court files as MD, she continued quietly. The same initials that appear in multiple offshore payments, the same initials Epstein attorneys claimed were clerical codes. She turned the letter to face the cameras, letting the entire country seethe crooked, frightened script of a teenager who'd once believed no one would ever read her final words. Then she looked to the committee bench, where some members now refused to meet her eyes. Her testimony was never recorded, her face was never shown, her name never spoken in court, but she existed. Trump's knuckles were white again. One of his attorneys leaned in, whispering furiously, but Jasmine ignored them. Hira never left the letter. She didn't ask for revenge. She didn't ask for justice. She just asked to be remembered. She placed the page gently on the table like it was glass. She begged us to listen. Jasmine said, her voice low now, unforgiving. And we didn't. Jasmine didn't need to shout. By this point, in the hearing, she knew the weight of silence spoke louder than fury. The ledger had rattled the room. The letter had stopped its heart. But what she was about to play next would dig into the spine of the country and stay there. This time, it wasn't a number, a name. It was a voice. She placed the old audio recorder on the table. It's plastic, scratched and dull, like it had been, hidden for years. No flashy equipment, no dramatic music, just a red button. She looked straight at the chair and said calmly, "I have a recording dated August 21st, 2000, recovered from Epstein's private network in the Virgin Islands, verified by 3 separate forensic labs." No one spoke. Every owner leaned forward. Jasmine pressed play. The audio crackled to life. First Kimethi hiss of static, then 2 voices, clear, familiar, heavy with entitlement and menace. Epstein spoke first, the girl starting to talk. "I told you this would happen," Trump replied, his tone low and annoyed. "I thought you had her under control." Epstein again. "She was on tilth test, you saw it." Trump didn't hesitate. "So what? They don't." "No, it's men." Then came a pause. 5 seconds of silence that sounded like a gun being loaded off screen. Epstein's voice flat. "What if it is?" And Trump. "Then it never happened." Jasmine let the silence that followed stretch just long enough to make the roommate. Then she reached forward and clicked the recorder off. The explosion came instantly. Trump bolted upright, one hand slamming the table. "That's AI deepfake nonsense. You can fake anything now. This is a political hit." One of his lawyers tried to calm him, but Trump kept going. "He never said that. That's a lie. Gliss is edited." Jasmine slowly turned to him, one brow raised. "That file was authenticated by Homeland Security, Columbia University's Digital Forensics Lab, and CNN's investigative unit," she said evenly. "Your own legal team submitted 2 of those labs during prior hearings. You know the process. Voice match, metadata, trace background, verification occasion, Epstein's private office phone line, direct landline timestamped. It's real." Trump's face froze, his lips parted, but no words came out. Jasmine let up. "What's damning here isn't just what you said, it's how you said it." No shock, no hesitation, just aplomb. She clicked again. The screen behind her lit up with the full transcript in bold text. Every word of that short, devastating conversation. No context needed. What if it is? Then it never happened. Jasmine looked at the text, then at the country through the camera lens. "You didn't act like someone trying to stop a crime. You acted like someone trying to delete one." Shephouse letting that land, and now the deletion failed. The whole world just heard what you never wanted them to. She stepped back from the mic slowly, while the weight of that sentence crushed the last air out of the chamber. The room was still, holding its breath after Trump's voice rang out like a verdict. In Chapter 4.1. Jasmine didn't let it settle. She leaned into the mic, her tone clipped and steady, and addressed the chair without breaking eye contact. "Our next witness is a remote cybersecurity expert operating under federal whistleblower prot, codename Ecolod. He has direct knowledge of Epstein's digital infrastructure and offshore data systems." All screens flickered, then dimmed. A wave of static swept across monitors, like a ripple from something deep and ancient, rising to the surface. Slowly, a distorted figure, face blurred, voice masked, silhouette wrapped in grey light. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't need to. His presence spoke of vaults cracked open and secrets clawing their way into daylight. "I worked for a Singapore-based security consultancy, contracted by a subsidiary of G. Global Holdings in 2019. The voice said, its metallic rasp chilling in contrast to the marble stillness of the chamber. "My assignment was basic at first: data redundancy firewall evaluation. But then I found a mirrored directory structure pointing to indexed cloud nodes in Zurich, Manila, and the Virgin Islands. Most folders were decoys, but one directory scrubbed with false timestamps was labeled Project Angel." A pause. The image on screen shifted to a directory map. Dozens of nested folders tagged with alphanumeric codes. Jasmine narrowed her eyes. She had seen one of those codes before in the financial files she'd exposed. "TE:45 p.m. Ecolod continued. Inside were voice logs, payment chains, internal memos, and medical scans. Some folders were labeled by date, some by initials, the rest by function, M for minor, C for custody, P for pregnancy, and then there were the strings names encoded in shorthand, redacted in every legal file. But here they were organized like assets in a portfolio. Trump's legal team was frozen. Phones lowered, fingers stopped mad text. For the first time, it wasn't just Jasmine making claims, it was a voice from the inside. A cross-referenced voice. Logs and fund transfers. Every transfer Jasmine Crockett displayed today. It's in the archive. Every missing girl she named, there's a voice file. Every sealed medical document, there's a duplicate, time-stamped, digitally signed. A member of the committee, visibly pale, interrupted. How do we know this isn't fabricated? Without replying, the figure lifted a gloved hand and typed a command. The screen behind him morphed text data replaced by a new interface. Rows of files appeared, names, dates, audio tags, and then without warning, one file queued itself. A title flashed, Audio 787B voice log. The hacker's tone remained mechanical. You don't have to trust me. Just listen to what they paid to silence. The interface ticked forward. Jasmine didn't move. Trump was holding his breath. The gallery leaned in as the audio buffer hit 000. Then it played, and this time the voice wasn't Trump's. It wasn't Epstein's. It was a girl. Quiet, tired, real, and no one in the room was ready for what she was about to say. The chamber had turned to stone. No coughs, no whispers, not even a breath. All eyes were locked on the screen as the audio file began. A faint thum filled the speakers. Ambient noise, like it had been recorded in a basement or a sealed room. Then came the voice, a girl's voice, young, unsteady, tired in a way a child never should be. The kind of tired that doesn't come from sleepless nights, but from being broken too many times and still waking up the next day. They said, if I speak, she whispered barely above her breath, no one will believe me. The air in the chamber they said I would ruin everything, that people like me don't survive the truth. But if someone's listening, if anyone still cares. Her voice cracked. The recording hissed softly, like it was trying to protect her. Muffed the pain, but it couldn't. Tell my mother, I forgive her. I know she thought I'd be safe. Then silence. Not the kind of silence that feels peaceful. The kind that leaves a bruise. The recording ended. No fade out, just a hard stop. The timestamp froze on the screen. 024. That was all it took to destroy the illusion that this was ever about politics. Jasmine didn't speak. Not at first. But one lawmaker did, an older Republican hand, trembling voice, cracking. That was someone's child. The silence didn't break. It shattered. Jasmine turned slowly toward the monitor. Her voice didn't rise. It's least you heard her. She scanned the room slowly, from the committee bench toothpress gallery to Trump, who now sat motionless, his arms crossed, eyes unfocused. That girl didn't name names. She didn't ask for revenge. She didn't talk about justice or law or policy. She just asked someone to remember that she existed, that she forgave the one person who should have protected her. Jasmine ested the silence. Remained. It wrapped around the room like a second ceiling. She had no microphone, no lawyer, no platform, just a voice recorder hidden in a house built for secrets. And now, 24 years later, her voice is being heard, not in a courtroom, but in Congress, where it never should have taken this long to arrive. She turned to Trump slowly. He didn't meet her eyes. You had everything, money, power, ready to bury anything in your way. She paused, her voice, steady, but burning just beneath the surface. And still, you dare call this political? Then she looked straight into the camera, out, beyond the walls of the chamber. And if this girl were your daughter, would you still be silent? The clip of Vega's voice hit the internet like a meteor. Within minutes, it was everywhere. Sliced caption reposted or broadcast. News anchors choked up mid-sentence. Podcasts froze mid-episode. Comment sections filled faster than they could be moderated. The line that echoed across generations wasn't Trump's or Epstein's. It was hers. Tell me, mother, I forgive her. By nightfall, the numbers were impossible to ignore. 0.47 million views across platforms in under 6 hours. Hashtags surged. Forgive her. Believe the girls. But what shocked the nation most wasn't Gen Z outrage or influencer activism. It was who was speaking up. Vietnam veterans, church grandmothers, Midwestern dads with MAGA caps, no breed in drawers. I voted for him. One retired co-worker wrote twice. I thought it was all noise, but that voice, that was someone's daughter. Another comment posted by a woman from Ohio with a profile photo of a golden retriever and an American flag read simply, "I believed him for years, never again." Outside Trump Tower in Manhattan, candles lined the sidewalk by noon. They weren't political. They were personal. Small frames of missing girls, post-it notes with first names, Emily, Kiara, Bethany. No last names, just the names that could have been Marin, the ones people didn't fight for in time. In Palm Beach, Mar-a-Lago was flooded, not with water, but with silence. Protesters stood shoulder to shoulder holding photos, not signs. Mothers linked arms. Nurses held rosaries. One woman stood on the edge of the crowd holding a copy of her daughter's sealed case file from 1999. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Jasmine watched it all unfold from the window of her office. Blinds half drawn, lights off. Her phone had stopped ringing only because it couldn't keep up. Over 7,000 emails in the inbox, nearly half of them from mothers, some from survivors, some from women who had kept their stories buried for decades until the girl's voice cracked something open in them they didn't know was still alive. They didn't write about politics, they wrote about guilt, about silence, about how it crept in over time like mold, about how they told their daughters not to make a scene, not to ruin a good man's life, not to speak unless they had proof. And now they were asking one question: did I wait too long to believe her? Jasmine sat with every letter until one made her stop breathing. A single line written by a father in Kansas. I told her to be quiet. She never came home again. Her hand trembled for the first time that week. That night, she stood in front of the press, not with a speech, but with fire in her throat. "This isn't about left or right," she said, voice clipped, rising with grief. "It's about who we choose to silence. And why?" The call started 3 hours after her press conference. Not from reporters, not from supporters, from numbers that didn't trace, from voices that didn't blink. The first one came at 3:17 a.m., a male voice, low, breathless. "You're waking demons that never died." The second commit FIA 41 mass, through a foreign IP, a whisper this time. "Not angry, Tom, too calm. They buried her for a reason. You dig up the past, you join it." By noon, 5 more voicemails, all different voices, all saying the same thing: stop. Jasmine didn't flinch. Not on camera, not in the Capitol, but alone in her office. She played each message twice, not to scare herself, to memorize the tone. Marcus Herr stormed in with a printout of a Reddit thread. 2 hours later, hundreds of threats, doctored images, calls to expose the fraud. One a fake address. Another swore she was part of a plot to take down real America. She didn't look up from her desk. Outside her DC office, someone had left a doll, its mouth sewn shut with red thread. But the worst came that night. Security footage showed 2 figures, in hooded sweatshirts sapping her congressional district office in Dallas. One carried a bucket, the other held a spray can. They didn't break in. They didn't try to hide. They walked straight to the front door, splashed red paint across the glass, then scrolled one word over her nameplate: liar. The next morning, the office door opened to the smell of metal and paint, and something colder: warning. Staff gathered, in silence, staring at streaks. Someone reached to start cleaning, but Jasmine stepped in front of them. "No," she said. "Leave it." Security offered full protection. Escort teams, private vehicles, 24/7 monitoring. The Capitol Police advised she stay off public sidewalks for at least the next week. Her district office suggested postponing town halls. She refused. All of it. She showed up the next morning alone on foot. When Marcus asked why she didn't hesitate, "They want to scare me," she said. "They want to make the truth feel like a mistake." Heglands toward the red stain still drying on the pavement. "This isn't safe." Jasmine looked him in the eye. "If safe time in silence, I want no part of it." She walked through the front doors, past the cameras, past the whispers, past the glass that hadn't yet been replaced. The red paint still stained the frame. She let it stay. That night, as her name trended again, she stood before the press once more. No notes, no script. "If they try to silence me," she said, her voice like steel under velvet, "they'll have to do it in front of the world, before the threats, before the ledger, before the girl's voice cracked a nation in half." There was a little house in Oak Cliff, Texas. Jasmine Crockett grew up there. 2 bedrooms, creaky floorboards, and a front porch that held more truths than most courtrooms ever would. It wasn't grand, but it was loud, with love and louder with lessons. Her mother didn't believe in sugarcoating anything. Not the world, not the way it could treat women who dared to speak. Jasmine remembered sitting on the floor at 7 years old, listening to her mother read a newspaper story about a nurse who was fired after reporting a doctor for assault. The woman lost her job. The doctor got promoted. Jasmine asked why. Her mother didn't blink. Because some men fear women with voices, and because too many women are told not to have one. There was no pity in her tone, only warning. Jasmine carried that line in her chest like a fire she wasn't allowed to put out. Every Sunday, her mother would take her to church, not just to pray, but to listen, not to pastor, but to the older women afterward. Stories traded in whispers under stained glass windows. Stories of pain swallowed, of hands that lingered too long, of justice that never called back. By 15, Jasmine stopped whispering. At 17, she marched alone into the principal's office. After a teacher grabbed a classmate's wrist too hard and called it discipline. At 24, she stood in court for the first time and defended a woman no one else would represent. A woman who had bruises and no witnesses. A woman who'd already been told to be quiet by 3 lawyers before her. And by 38, she had learned that the more truth she carried, the more people would try to crush her with it. But they didn't know where she came from. They didn't know that her mother once stood in the hallway of a hospital tough face, with a chief surgeon and said, "If you put your hands on another nurse, I'll break your fingers myself." She didn't get fired. She got promoted. Jasmine never forgot that. Not the line, not the posture, not the look of a woman who had been told to back down and chose instead to plant her feet deeper. "My mother didn't raise a whisper," Jasminian said. "She raised a reckoning." And now, all these years later, with the world watching and the powerful rattling their cages, Jasmine stood exactly where she was meant to stand. She looked into the camera, no fear, no apology, no tremble in her breath. "I'm not done." Then she leaned in just slightly, her voice a quiet dare. "And you, if this was your daughter's story, would you be the chamber?" Lights dimmed slightly as a woman in a pale, gray suit stepped up to the microphone. Her name was Aveda Kinich, once Melania and Trump's most trusted aide. For 6 years, she handled everything: flight schedules, clothing secrets. She hadn't spoken publicly in years until now. Jasmine sat still, her fingers steepled under her chin. She didn't interrupt. She didn't move. The entire room leaned forward as Aveda adjusted the microphone and took a slow, measured breath. "It was March 17th, 2018, she said. Voice, low accented but steady. "Mrs. Trump found a sealed manila envelope inside her husband's private filing cabinet. She told me she was looking for old photographs. Instead, she found something else." The air in the hearing room thickened. She didn't say Mac, just opened the envelope, flipped through a few sheets, and then sat down like something inside her cracked. Eva blinked slowly, collecting herself. There were photos, a DNA result, a name, Marin. She looked toward Jasmine. Now, she didn't ask me for help. She didn't say where she was going. She just packed one handbag and left that night. "Where did she go?" a congressman asked. "I don't know," replied. But when she returned 3 days later, she was different. Cold, quiet. She'd placed the envelope in Asmal's safe behind a painting in her dressing room, and she never opened it again. But I saw her holding it late at night, staring like she couldn't stop hearing that name. Jasmine flipped to a page in her binder, held it high. A scanned image of the DNA envelope, stamped confidential. Match confirmed. She cried when she saw the name Marin. Ita said suddenly, voice faltering. "She told me. She told me it reminded her of Baron, of when he was small, of how scared she would be if someone had taken him." She looked down now, no longer facing the cameras. She said, "If this is true, the whole country is broken." Then she turned off the lights and didn't speak to me for a week. Silence fell, not political silence, but human silence. Even Jasmine blinked twice before responding. What stopped her from going public? Another lawmaker asked. Ivita hesitated. Then she didn't want her son to grow up knowing that name. Marin, that pain, that secret. Trump stared forward from the defense table. His knuckles were white. He didn't look at his wife. He didn't say a word. And Jasmine, she didn't attack. She didn't gloat. She simply looked at the nation through the lens of every broadcast camera. Her tone soft, but with an edge that scraped bone. She cried for Marin. Jasmine said, "But America needs more than tears." Then she looked directly into the camera. If the First Lady of the United States couldn't protect one girl's truth, who will? It took 6 months of sealed motions, 2 subpoenas, and a court order signed in the dead of night. But Jasmine finally stood at the rusted gate of Storage Unit 47B, a grey forgotten container tucked between 2 condemned warehouses outside Newark. It had once belonged to a Delaware shell company traced back to Epstein's legal trust. Most thought it was filled with furniture. Jasmine didn't think. She knew. The door groaned as it opened. Dust spilled out like breath from a corpse. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the silence of something meant to stay buried. Her team moved slowly, cameras on gloves secured. And there, under a tarp between 2 crates marked archival, they found it. A locked steel trunk. No markings, just a fingerprint scanner long since deactivated by time. They forced it open inside a manila folder marked C-793, a fake death certificate stamped notarized, but issued under the name Maria Lane. The date of death, June 4, 2002. Cause undetermined respiratory failure. No autopsy, no burial record, no listed family. Jasmine flipped the certificate over. Taped to the back was a single blood test, old and faded, but the code, Child 791 Tone 3. There were no fingerprints, no dental records, no medical chain of custody. But tucked behind the fake paperwork was a strip of reserved cloth, with dried skin cells catalogued and labeled. Jasmine's forensic expert scanned the sample through the portable DNA reader. 3 minutes later, the screen turned green. 997% match. It was her. Jasmine didn't speak. She couldn't. She simply lowered her head, her fingers trembling over the edges of that certificate. For 20 years, this girl had not been mourned. She had even been remembered because she hadn't died. She'd been erased. Epstein's signature was at the bottom, and next to it in faint ink, the initials DJT, dated 1 week before their death. When the reporters gathered outside the warehouse, Jasmine didn't give them a press statement. She held up certificate, let the camera zoom in, and then said just one thing: America deserves to know when a grave is a lie. Inside the chamber, the file was displayed on every screen. Even the senators, who'd remained skeptical, started to shift uncomfortably. The truth was no longer a matter of belief. It was a matter of blood, lies, and paper. She looked into the lens, her voice flat but sharp as a blade. "They didn't bury her," she said. "They scrubbed her from existence." Then slowly she turned her eyes toward the disable, and the people who did it wore suits, not masks. And then came Thephanol cut, cold-cutting and unforgettable. She never died. She was erased. But if the system can erase or killed, what else has it erased without a sound? The lights in the chamber dimmed, not by intention, but as if the room itself sensed what was coming. Jasmine stood still, remote in hand, facing a wall of screens. "There's one more," she said, her voice stripped of emotion. This was recovered from the Ecolot archive and authenticated by 3 independent labs. The play button blinked once, then silence fell, a static hum. Then the unmistakable tones of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, voices low, casual, like discussing dinner reservations. "You're sure she's gone?" Trump asked. His tone was impatient, like this conversation bored him. Epstein responded coolly. $4 million now. If the kid disappears again, you get the island." The words landed like gunshots in the gallery. No one moved. Not the stenographer, not the bailiff, not even the committee chair. The audio continued. Trump chuckled. "You drive a hard bargain, Jeff." A pause, then a soft clink of ice in a glass. "But I like islands, especially ones without reporters." The room's air thickened into something solid, like guilt pressing against the walls. Jasmine let it play 5 seconds, longer, then stopped at mid-sentence. Right as Trump said, "No records, no trail, just like last time." She turned slowly, letting her gaze sweep the room. Senators were pale. Staffers looked like they were holding their breath underwater. America was watching, not with rage, but with disbelief. It wasn't just about one girl anymore. This was a blueprint. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She walked to the table, placed a printed transcript down for the record, and said, "This is the transaction that turned a child's life into a currency." $4 million for silence, $4 million to erase and name. The committee chair leaned forward visibly. Congresswoman Crockett, are you alleging this deal was followed through? Jasmine didn't flinch. No, Chairwoman. I'm alleging it was followed through multiple times. Muffled gas rippled through the room. Phones buzzed with breaking alerts. Hashtag erupted across the nation. But Jasmine kept her eyes locked forward, still cold, controlled. Trump tried to speak, but his mic was muted. His face was red knuckles, white on the table's edge. He mouthed something, but no one cared. The tape had spoken louder than he ever could. Jasmine leaned in toward the mic, her voice just above a whisper, yet slicing through the silence like a scalpel. Now, how many others? And for the first time since the hearing began, even her harshest critics said nothing. Because some questions don't need wars, they need reckoning. The gavel dropped like a thunderclap, not once but twice. The chamber floor, which had spent weeks steeped in tension, now crackled with something heavier than rage consequence. By a vote of 14-3, the chair announced, voice steady but breathless, the committee moves to open a full criminal investigation into Donald J. Trump and associated entities. A pause followed sharp still, as if history itself was processing the moment. Across the room, Trump's legal counsel pushed his chair back without a word. His briefcase remained on the table. No closing argument, no rebuttal, just silence and footsteps, retreating fast. Trump didn't follow. He stayed slumped, fist clenched, eyes locked on floor like a man trying to unhear everything. Jasmine remained seated, her back straight, hands resting on the thick folder that had gutted the illusion of power. She hadn't flinched through their courtings, the threats, or the gasps. And now, with the nation watching, she didn't smile, didn't gloat. She simply closed the folder softly, deliberately, like sealing a coffin. Reporters rushed from the gallery. Phones lit up with alerts. Investigation approved. Trump under federal probe. Protesters outside the Capitol erupted into cheers. Flags waved, horns blared, and above it all, Jasmine stood not as a politician, but as the woman who refused to be silenced. A junior congressman whispered behind her, "You just changed everything." She didn't answer him. Her eyes scanned the room, locking for a moment on the empty seat where Trump's attorney had been. Then, with measured steps, she moved to the podium one last time, not for drama, but because the people deserved a final word. This wasn't about vengeance, she said, voice low, but firm. It was about accountability for the voices that never made it into courtrooms, for the girls who disappeared before they had names. She took a breath. Some used their billions to erase the truth, but the truth didn't cooperate. Cameras zoomed in on her face, calm, resolved, scarred, but standing. I've seen the ledgers, I've seen the tapes, and now the world has seen them too. You made billions, Mr. Trump, but you'll lose your name. She stepped back, microphone still warm, but her part was done. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the room broke into quiet applause, not from allies, but from those who hours ago had doubted her. The kind of applause reserved not for triumph, but for courage. And as the hearing adjourned, one thought rang louder than the gavel ever could. If truth can bring down a tower of gold, what else is it still waiting to shatter? The marble headstone was new, but the ground it marked had been undisturbed for 23 years. Jasmine stood in front of it, coat buttoned tight against the wind, eyes fixed on the name engraved not in granite but in Justice Marine, Elise Connors. No aliases, no sealed records, no case numbers, just Annam, a name they tried to erase. Behind her stretched a silent sea of faces. Mothers clutching photos, veterans gripping folded flags, nurses and scrubs still stained from yesterday's shift. Some had lost children, some had lost sisters, others had simply lost faith, but all had come for the same reason, to reclaim what silence tried to bury. Jasmine hadn't called them, they came on their own. The sun broke through grey clouds, as if even the sky wanted to bear witness. Jasmine stepped forward and placed a small white rose at the base of the stone. Not a bouquet, just one girl who had become a symbol of all the others. A hush fell over the crowd, not planned, not scripted. It was reverence and grief and rage that had been waiting years for a place to land. There was a time, Jasmine began, voice steady but low, when her grave didn't have a name, just coordinates. When even the dirt above her was silent, she turned slightly, looking at the women behind her. They told her she wasn't trowel, that her pain didn't matter, that the powerful could write her off like a bad investment. But today she is real. Today she has a name. A woman in the front, a mother with silver hair and a trembling jaw, let out a quiet sob. Jasmine didn't pause. She let it rise, let it fill the space, because this moment wasn't about her. It was about the echo of the voice they all heard in that hearing room. That one line still haunted the country. If I die, it's because the secret became too loud. Jasmine took a breath and knelt, placing her hand on the cool marble. She is not forgotten, she whispered, and neither are the others. The crowd didn't cheer, they didn't chant. They just stood like pillars, like witnesses. Some held hands, some held hands, and for once there were no debates, no headlines, just truth laid bare in a cemetery that was now a battlefield. As Jasmine Rosand faced the cameras lining the distant edge of the hill, she gave them one final line, a question not to politicians, not to donors, but to every American watching. If your child vanished, wouldn't you want someone to ask why the studio lights were blinding? But Jasmine didn't blink. She sat center stage, a single mic clipped to her collar, facing a sea of cameras, each one beaming her face into millions of themes. There was no makeup touch-up, no teleprompter, just her voice and the truth it carried. She looked straight into the lens, into the eyes of a nation that had watched in silence, in doubt, in discomfort. This isn't just about a man, she began, her voice low but resolute. It's about a system built to look away, a machine that learned to convert pain into policy and victims into liabilities. She didn't mention Trump's name. She didn't have to. His shadow was already crawling across the headlines. But tonight wasn't about Udaws. It was about dragging the silence into the light. For years we breed these stories to protect institutions, to preserve legacies, to keep dinner table conversations from becoming inconvenient. And in doing so, we erased people. A photo of Marinapiad beside her on screen. Not a mugshot, a school photo. Smiling, Jasmine glanced at it, and for a second, her voice nearly cracked. But she studied. The truth is, we didn't fail Marinbak. We didn't know. We failed her because we knew and chose not to believe. There was a long pause, not for drama, but for breath, for space. Fourth weight of every girl whose name was never printed. Every mother whose voice was drowned out by campaign, checks and closed-door deals. Jasmine leaned in. This is bigger than politics, bigger than one courtroom or one scandal. It's about the silence we accepted for comfort and the truth we buried for power. A soft static filled the airwaves as networks scrambled to sense her. Beauty was too late. Jasmine looked directly into the lens, calm, unwavering. Final dot. How many more daughters must disappear before we stop protecting the men who made them ghosts? Sometimes the ghosts fear most aren't from the past. They're the truths we allowed power to bury in silence. Not everyone gets their chance to tell their story, but we always have the choice to listen. If you've ever looked away out of fear or comfort, would you dare to face the truth now? If this story shook something and you don't just scroll past it, like, share and subscribe.